in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California. Justin Riddle. Plaintiff. V. X Corp aka Twitter Incorporated. Defendant. Civil action no. Complaint and demand for jury trial I. Introduction. 1. This action arises from defendant X Corp's, formerly known as Twitter Incorporated, hereinafter X Corp, fraudulent, negligent, and unlawful conduct in selectively enforcing its policies, arbitrarily promoting content, and effectively stealing from plaintiff by suppressing his paid account features while continuing to bill him. X Corp's actions not only cause direct financial and emotional harm to plaintiff but also represent a disturbing pattern of abuse enabled by the broad immunities and lack of accountability afforded to social media platforms under current laws and regulations. 2. Defendant enabled and facilitated clear copyright infringement, impersonation, and harassment of plaintiff on its platform, despite repeated notifications and takedown requests from plaintiff. X Corp's failure to address these blatant violations of its own policies and of plaintiff's legal rights demonstrates a willful disregard for the law and a belief that it is above accountability. 3. Beyond the specific harms suffered by plaintiff, this case highlights the broader systemic issues of unchecked power and lack of accountability in the social media industry. The outcome of this case has the potential to set a precedent that reshapes the relationship between social media platforms and the public they serve, reasserting the primacy of individual rights, freedom of speech, and the rule of law in the digital age. 2. Jurisdiction and venue. 4. This court has diversity jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. Section 1332 as the amount in controversy exceeds $75,000 and the parties are citizens of different states. Venue is proper in this district under 28 U.S.C. Section 1391b2 because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claim occurred in this district. 3. Parties. 5. Plaintiff Justin Riddle. Plaintiff is an individual residing in Omaha, Nebraska. Plaintiff is a citizen of Nebraska. 6. Defendant X Corp, formerly known as Twitter Incorporated, is a Delaware corporation with its principal place of business in San Francisco, California. X Corp is a citizen of Delaware and California. IV. Factual allegations. 7. Plaintiff holds a valid registered copyright in a photograph of himself and his wife, which is attached to this complaint as exhibit. A plaintiff obtained this copyright registration specifically because X Corp repeatedly failed to remove infringing uses of the image from its platform despite plaintiff's numerous reports and takedown requests. 8. Beginning in December 2023, various accounts on X Corp's platform began using plaintiff's copyrighted photograph as well as his name and likeness, without and against plaintiff's consent. These accounts used plaintiff's image and identity to harass plaintiff, impersonate him, and provoke conflicts with other users. Attached as exhibits B are screenshots and links to lengthy screen recordings documenting this harassment and impersonation. 9. On 4 separate occasions, plaintiff submitted separate legal DMCA compliant takedown notices to X Corp, identifying the infringing uses of his copyrighted photograph and demanding that the infringing material be removed. Copies of these takedown notices are attached as exhibits FI. Despite these notices, X Corp failed to remove the infringing content and allowed the harassment and impersonation to continue. This was not possible to do from the app, but instead required plaintiff to visit a different website with multiple warnings about the fact that this was a legal declaration and that there would be potential criminal and financial liabilities for inaccurate information. 10. In addition to the copyright infringement, the accounts harassing and impersonating plaintiff clearly violated X Corp's stated policies against harassment, impersonation, and hate speech. Plaintiff repeatedly reported these violations to X Corp through its designated channels, but X Corp failed to take any action and ignored plaintiff's reports. 11. While allowing this harassment to continue unchecked, X Corp simultaneously suppressed plaintiff's own paid account on its platform. Plaintiff had purchased a premium account which entitled him to certain features such as promoted tweets and increased visibility. However, X Corp arbitrarily limited the reach and visibility of plaintiff's account, effectively rendering his paid features useless. 12. Even more egregiously, X Corp continued to bill plaintiff for these paid features even after suspending his account and preventing him from using them. Between February and July 2024, X Corp charged plaintiff's account on 6 separate occasions for promoted tweets and other paid features, despite the fact that plaintiff's account had been suspended and he was unable to use any of these features. 13. When plaintiff attempted to cancel his paid subscription, he found that X Corp's suspension of his account prevented him from accessing the cancellation feature. X Corp required plaintiff to navigate to a separate website to cancel his subscription, but due to the suspension, plaintiff was unable to complete the cancellation process. As a result, X Corp continued to bill plaintiff for services it was not providing, effectively stealing from plaintiff. 14. Upon information and belief, X Corp's actions toward plaintiff, including its failure to enforce its policies against harassment and copyright infringement, its arbitrary suppression of plaintiff's paid account, and its continued billing for services not rendered, were intentional, willful, and malicious, demonstrating a blatant disregard for plaintiff's rights and a belief that X Corp is above the law. 15. The copyright infringement enabled and facilitated by X Corp was particularly egregious in its scope and impact. A. The copyrighted work in question is a formal personal photograph of plaintiff with his wife, not a commercial work. The unauthorized use of this photograph was thus a gross invasion of plaintiff's privacy and personal life. B. The photograph was not merely used by 1 or 2 isolated accounts, but by a network of hundreds of accounts that systematically harassed and impersonated plaintiff. These accounts created hundreds, if not thousands, of posts incorporating plaintiff's copyrighted photograph. Each of these posts constitutes a separate act of copyright infringement. C. The infringement was not an isolated incident but continued for an extended period of time, despite plaintiff's numerous complaints and takedown requests to X Corp. X Corp had actual knowledge of the infringement yet failed to take any meaningful action to stop it. 16. Each individual post by each of the infringing accounts constitutes a separate instance of copyright infringement. Every time an infringing account posted plaintiff's copyrighted photograph, it illegally displayed that photograph to a potentially new audience, causing a new violation of plaintiff's exclusive rights. 17. The scale of infringement enabled by X Corp is staggering. While the exact number of infringing posts will be determined through discovery, a conservative estimate based on the evidence already available suggests that the infringing accounts made at least 500 separate posts using plaintiff's copyrighted photograph. At the statutory maximum of $150,000 per willful infringement, X Corp's failure to address this widespread infringement has exposed it to potential statutory damages of $75 million or more. 18. X Corp's conduct in enabling and refusing to address this extensive copyright infringement, despite actual knowledge and repeated takedown notices from plaintiff, goes beyond mere negligence or inaction. It demonstrates a willful blindness amounting to intentional facilitation of the infringement. X Corp's blatant disregard for plaintiff's rights as a copyright owner is egregious and cannot be excused as an isolated lapse or honest mistake. 19. In addition to the financial harm caused by the copyright infringement, plaintiff has suffered severe and ongoing emotional distress as a result of X Corp's actions. The relentless harassment and impersonation enabled by X Corp and X Corp's refusal to address it despite plaintiff's pleas have taken a heavy toll on plaintiff's mental well-being, personal relationships, and sense of safety. The damage to plaintiff's privacy and personal life cannot be overstated. The broader implications and platform accountability. 20. The facts of this case, while egregious in their own right, are but one example of a broader pattern of abuse and lack of accountability enabled by the current legal and regulatory environment surrounding social media platforms like X Corp. 21. The immunities granted to internet platforms under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act have been stretched far beyond their original intent. While these protections were initially designed to foster growth and innovation in the nascent internet industry, they now serve as a shield behind which social media giants can hide from responsibility for their actions, even when those actions directly facilitate harm to individuals and society. 22. X Corp's conduct in this case demonstrates the dangers of this lack of accountability. X Corp's complete control over its platform, combined with its ability to selectively enforce its policies, effectively allows it to act as a private arbiter of free speech and public discourse. This unchecked power has been wielded to suppress facts, promote falsehoods, and silence viewpoints that run counter to X Corp's preferred narratives. 23. The present case in which X Corp knowingly allowed blatant copyright infringement and harassment to continue despite repeated notices and clear evidence is a stark illustration of how this power can be abused. X Corp's failure to act in the face of such obvious unlawful conduct strongly suggests that it believes itself to be above the law. 24. This belief in its own invincibility has emboldened X Corp and other platforms like it to push the boundaries even further. From arbitrary censorship of political speech to the manipulation of information flows for electoral advantage, these platforms have shown a disturbing willingness to interfere with the most fundamental processes of our democracy. 25. The consequences of this unchecked power reach far beyond any single case. The ability to control the public narrative, suppress inconvenient truths, and amplify disinformation at scale represents a grave threat to the very foundations of our society. It undermines the free exchange of ideas, the ability of citizens to make informed decisions, and the accountability of those in positions of power. 26. Plaintiff's case, therefore, is not merely about vindicating his individual rights, as important as those are. It is about confronting the systemic failures that have allowed such abuses to occur and continue unchecked. It is about challenging the status quo of platform immunity and arguing for a new paradigm of accountability in the digital public square. 27. The outcome of this case has the potential to be a watershed moment in the fight to restore the rule of law and the primacy of individual rights in the face of unchecked corporate power. It is an opportunity to begin the hard work of crafting a new regulatory framework that recognizes the central role these platforms now play in our social and political lives and that imposes on them the responsibilities and obligations that come with such power. 28. This court, in adjudicating plaintiff's claims, has the chance to send a clear message that the days of platform impunity are over. That the protections of Section 230 are not a license for lawlessness. That the fundamental rights of individuals, including the right to be free from harassment, the right to privacy, and the right to the fruits of one's own intellectual labor, do not cease to exist merely because a violation occurs on a digital platform. 29. Plaintiff thus respectfully asks this court to consider not only the specific legal and factual issues presented by his case, but the broader context in which they occur. The resolution of this case should not only provide justice for plaintiff but also light the way forward for a new era of platform accountability. An era in which the rule of law applies equally in the digital realm as it does in the physical, and in which the rights of individuals are not subordinate to the whims of corporate giants. By claims. First cause of action. Copyright infringement. 30. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. 31. X Corp's conduct constitutes infringement of plaintiff's exclusive rights under the Copyright Act, 17 U.S.C. Section 106, including but not limited to the rights of reproduction, distribution, and public display. 32. Plaintiff is the owner of a valid copyright in the photograph at issue, which was registered with the United States Copyright Office prior to the infringement. 33. X Corp, with actual knowledge of plaintiff's copyright, and without plaintiff's authorization, facilitated the reproduction, distribution, and public display of plaintiff's copyrighted work by providing its platform and tools to the infringing accounts and refusing to remove the infringing material after receiving multiple DMCA takedown notices from plaintiff. 34. X Corp had actual knowledge of the infringement. Plaintiff provided X Corp with multiple DMCA compliant takedown notices identifying the infringing material and demanding its removal. X Corp failed to expeditiously remove or disable access to the infringing material and prevent the infringement from occurring. 35. X Corp's conduct and the infringement it enabled was willful and deliberate, entitling plaintiff to enhanced statutory damages under 17 U.S.C. Section 504c2. 36. Each separate post by each infringing account constitutes a separate act of infringement, entitling plaintiff to statutory damages for each infringement under 17 U.S.C. Section 504c1 or actual damages plus X Corp's profits attributable to the infringement under 17 U.S.C. Section 504b at plaintiff's election. 37. Plaintiff is also entitled to injunctive relief under 17 U.S.C. Section 502, including an order requiring X Corp to remove all infringing uses of plaintiff's copyrighted photograph from its platform and to implement technological measures to prevent future infringement. 38. X Corp is further liable for contributory copyright infringement based on its material contribution to the infringing activities of its users with actual knowledge of the infringement. X Corp provided the platform, tools, and resources that made the infringement possible and refused to take steps to stop or limit the infringement after being notified of it. 39. X Corp is also vicariously liable for the infringement of its users because it had the right and ability to supervise and control the infringing activity and derived a direct financial benefit from the infringement in the form of advertising revenue and data collection. Second cause of action. Fraud/misrepresentation. 40. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. 41. X Corp made several false representations to plaintiff, including but not limited to, that it would promote and increase the visibility of plaintiff's paid account when in fact it actively suppressed plaintiff's account and limited its reach. B. That plaintiff's account had violated X Corp's policies when in fact X Corp's enforcement of its policies was arbitrary and discriminatory. C. That the fees charged to plaintiff were for services actually rendered when in fact X Corp prevented plaintiff from using the paid features while continuing to bill him. 42. X Corp knew that these representations were false at the time they were made. X Corp had actual knowledge that it was suppressing plaintiff's account, that its policy enforcement was arbitrary, and that it was billing plaintiff for services not rendered. 43. X Corp made these misrepresentations with the intent to defraud and deceive plaintiff to induce him to continue paying for services that X Corp had no intention of providing. 44. Plaintiff reasonably relied on X Corp's misrepresentations to his detriment, continuing to pay for services that were not provided and suffering harm to his reputation and online presence as a result of X Corp's suppression of his account. 45. As a direct and proximate result of X Corp's fraud and misrepresentation, plaintiff has suffered substantial economic losses, as well as emotional distress and damage to his reputation. Third cause of action. Breach of contract. 46. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. 47. Plaintiff and X Corp entered into a valid and enforceable contract when plaintiff signed up for X Corp services and agreed to its terms of service. 48. Under the terms of this contract, X Corp was obligated to provide certain services to plaintiff, including the paid account features for which plaintiff was billed. 49. Plaintiff fully performed his obligations under the contract by paying the required fees. 50. X Corp breached the contract by failing to provide the services promised, including by suppressing plaintiff's paid account, limiting its visibility and reach, and preventing plaintiff from using the paid features while continuing to bill him. 51. X Corp further breached the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing inherent in every contract by acting in a manner that unfairly interfered with plaintiff's right to receive the benefits of the contract. 52. As a direct and proximate result of X Corp's breaches, plaintiff has suffered substantial economic losses in an amount to be proven at trial. Fourth cause of action. Unjust enrichment. 53. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. 54. Plaintiff conferred a benefit on X Corp by paying for account features and services. 55. X Corp knowingly accepted and retained this benefit while simultaneously preventing plaintiff from using the paid features and suppressing his account. 56. Under these circumstances, it would be unjust for X Corp to retain the money paid by plaintiff without providing the services promised. 57. Plaintiff is entitled to restitution in the amount of all fees paid to X Corp for services not rendered under the equitable principle of unjust enrichment. B. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, plaintiff Justin Riddle respectfully requests that this court enter judgment in his favor and against defendant X Corp as follows. 1. For declaratory relief, including a declaration that X Corp's conduct violated plaintiff's rights under the Copyright Act and constituted fraud, breach of contract, and unjust enrichment. 2. For injunctive relief, including an order requiring X Corp to remove all infringing uses of plaintiff's copyrighted photograph from its platform, to implement technological measures to prevent future infringement, and to cease its unfair and deceptive business practices. 3. For actual damages according to proof. 4. For statutory damages for copyright infringement in the amount of $150,000 per infringement, or in such other amount as may be proper under 17 U.S.C. Section 504C. 5. For restitution of all fees paid by plaintiff to X Corp for services not rendered. 6. For pre- and post-judgment interest at the maximum legal rate. 7. For costs of suit, including reasonable attorney's fees as permitted by law. 8. For a trial by jury on all issues so triable. 9. For such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper, including but not limited to any measures necessary to correct the systemic abuses and lack of accountability that allowed X Corp's misconduct to occur and persist. Final note. Plaintiff respectfully draws the court's attention to the clear-cut nature of this case and the indisputable facts that support his claims. X Corp has sophisticated systems and a wealth of user data at its disposal, which should have made it easy to identify and stop the egregious harassment and copyright infringement plaintiff suffered. From plaintiff's submission of his government-issued identification to the account history to the extensive data X Corp collects on each user, including devices, IP addresses, MAC addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers, there can be no credible claim of honest mistake that would justify the company's repeated failure to address plaintiff's complaints. Copyright is effective at the moment of creation, not when the formal process is complete. The fact that plaintiff had to submit 4 separate DMCA takedown notices only to have his own account arbitrarily suspended without explanation underscores the willful and systemic nature of X Corp's misconduct. This is not a case of isolated errors or difficult judgment calls, but of a company knowingly and repeatedly ignoring its legal obligations and the fundamental rights of its users. Plaintiff is well aware of the due process violations that can occur when the legal system fails to uphold basic principles of law and fairness. He enters these proceedings with eyes wide open, fully prepared to vigorously contest any attempts to obscure the facts, muddy the legal waters, or deny him the justice he seeks and deserves. This case presents an opportunity for the court to hold a powerful corporation accountable and send a clear message that the fundamental rights of individuals cannot be trampled upon with impunity. Plaintiff urges the court to see this case for what it is, a clear-cut instance of unlawful conduct by a company that believes itself above the law, and to deliver a ruling that upholds the principles of justice, accountability, and the rule of law in the digital age. Respectfully submitted. Justin Riddle, pro se plaintiff, August 7, 2024.